Picture this. You're in the middle of another pointless argument. Voices getting louder, emotions running hotter, and suddenly you realize something profound. Every word you speak is giving your power away. Every reaction you offer is feeding a cycle that leaves you drained, frustrated, and somehow always on the losing end. But what if I told you that the most devastating response isn't a comeback, isn't a clever retort, isn't even raising your voice? It's something far more unsettling, far more powerful, and infinitely more intelligent. The art of walking away from drama isn't about running from conflict. It's about recognizing that most battles aren't worth the energy they consume, and that your peace of mind is worth more than any temporary victory in a meaningless exchange. You see, drama feeds on participation. It requires two people to dance, two egos to clash, two voices to create the chaos that leaves everyone involved feeling worse than when they started. Think about the last time you got pulled into unnecessary drama. Maybe it was a colleague who always finds something to complain about, a family member who thrives on stirring up tension, or someone on social media who just had to share their unsolicited opinion about your life choices. How did you feel afterward? Energized and victorious, or drained and somehow diminished? If you're honest with yourself, you probably felt the latter. The uncomfortable truth is that most of us have been conditioned to believe that not responding is a sign of weakness. We've been taught that silence means surrender, that walking away means losing, but this belief system is exactly what keeps us trapped in cycles of drama that serve no one and solve nothing. When you engage with drama, you're not standing up for yourself. You're volunteering to be someone else's emotional punching bag. Drama operates on a simple principle. It requires fuel to survive. Every time you respond to a provocative comment, every time you defend yourself against baseless accusations, every time you try to reason with someone who's clearly not interested in reason, you're adding fuel to a fire that will only burn you. The person creating the drama doesn't actually want resolution. They want reaction. They want to see you lose your composure, to watch you get pulled down to their level, to feel the satisfaction of knowing they can control your emotional state with a few carefully chosen words. But here's where it gets interesting. When you refuse to participate, when you choose silence over engagement, when you walk away instead of walking into the trap, something profound happens. The drama loses its power. The person trying to provoke you suddenly finds themselves talking to a wall, and walls don't argue back. They don't get defensive. They don't take the bait. They simply stand there, unmoved and unbothered. This isn't about being passive or avoiding all conflict. There's a massive difference between productive disagreement and pointless drama. Productive conflict involves two people who respect each other attempting to find common ground or understand different perspectives. Drama, on the other hand, is about ego, about being right, about making the other person feel bad. It's emotional masturbation disguised as communication. The subtle art of walking away requires you to develop what I call dramatic intelligence. This is the ability to recognize drama before it fully unfolds, to see the warning signs, to understand the difference between someone who wants to communicate and someone who wants to dominate. Dramatic intelligence means knowing when someone is trying to push your buttons and, more importantly, knowing that you don't have to let them. Consider the person who always seems to have a crisis that requires your immediate attention and emotional investment. They text you at all hours with their latest catastrophe. They monopolize conversations with their problems. They somehow always manage to make every situation about themselves. This isn't someone seeking genuine support. This is someone who has learned that drama is an effective way to control other people's time and energy. Or think about the individual who thrives on conflict, who always seems to find something wrong with everything, who can turn a casual conversation into a heated debate about politics, religion, or whatever controversial topic strikes their fancy. They're not interested in changing minds or finding solutions. They're addicted to the adrenaline rush of argument, the feeling of superiority that comes from believing they've won a debate that never should have happened in the first place. The most insidious form of drama is the kind that masquerades as care or concern. Someone might say, "I'm just trying to help," while proceeding to criticize your choices, your appearance, your relationships, or your life decisions. They frame their judgment as love, their interference as support, their drama as genuine concern. But genuine concern doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't require you to defend yourself or justify your choices. It doesn't leave you feeling attacked or diminished. Walking away from drama isn't about becoming cold or uncaring. It's about becoming selective with your energy, protective of your peace, and intentional about the battles you choose to fight. It's about understanding that your emotional well-being is not a renewable resource, and that every moment you spend engaged in pointless conflict is a moment you could have spent creating something beautiful, building something meaningful, or simply enjoying the quiet contentment of a drama-free existence. The people who will criticize you for walking away are usually the same people who benefit from your participation in their drama. They'll call you selfish, cold, or unavailable. They'll accuse you of not caring, of being a bad friend, of abandoning them in their time of need. But here's the thing, their reaction to your boundary is actually proof that the boundary was necessary. People who respect you will respect your need for peace. People who don't respect you will try to guilt you back into their chaos. This brings us to one of the most challenging aspects of walking away from drama: the guilt. You've been conditioned to believe that you owe people your attention, your energy, your emotional investment. You've been taught that good people always make themselves available, always try to help, always give others the benefit of the doubt. But this conditioning is exactly what makes you vulnerable to drama creators who know how to exploit your sense of obligation. The guilt you feel when you walk away from drama isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're breaking free from patterns that no longer serve you. It's the discomfort of growth, the inevitable friction that comes with choosing yourself over someone else's emotional chaos. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but discomfort is not the same as wrongness. Walking away from drama is a practice, not a one-time decision. It requires constant vigilance, continuous boundary setting, and the willingness to disappoint people who have become accustomed to your participation in their emotional theater. It means recognizing that some people will never understand your choice, and that their understanding is not required for your peace of mind. The beauty of mastering this art is that it creates space in your life for relationships and experiences that actually matter. When you stop wasting energy on drama, you suddenly have more energy for creativity, for genuine connection, for pursuing goals that align with your values. You discover that life is actually quite peaceful when you're not constantly putting out fires that other people started. Now that you've begun to recognize the patterns of drama and develop your dramatic intelligence, it's time to go deeper into understanding why you keep getting pulled back into these cycles. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people aren't just accidentally stumbling into drama. They're being systematically manipulated by individuals who have mastered the art of emotional extraction. There are people in your life right now who have identified you as an easy target. They've studied your responses, cataloged your triggers, and weaponized your own empathy against you. They know exactly which buttons to push to get you emotionally invested, and they use this knowledge to feed off your energy like emotional vampires. These aren't necessarily evil people. Many of them don't even realize they're doing it. But they've learned that creating chaos in your life gives them what they need: attention, validation, control, or simply the comfort of knowing they're not alone in their misery. They've turned your compassion into their personal entertainment system. The master manipulators understand something most people don't. Drama isn't about the actual conflict. It's about the emotional reaction. They don't need you to agree with them or even engage in the argument. They just need you to feel something: anger, guilt, fear, obligation. Any strong emotion will do, because once you're emotionally activated, you're under their influence. Think about the last time someone pulled you into their drama. Did they start with the real issue, or did they begin by making you feel responsible for their emotional state? Did they present facts, or did they tell you a story designed to make you feel guilty, angry, or afraid? Most likely, they bypassed your rational mind entirely and went straight for your emotional triggers. This is why walking away from drama isn't just about avoiding conflict. It's about refusing to be anyone's emotional supply. When you consistently fail to provide the reaction they're seeking, these people lose interest in you, not because you're boring, but because you're no longer useful to them. The guilt you feel when you don't respond to their crises isn't your conscience speaking. It's their programming working. They've conditioned you to believe that your emotional availability is a moral obligation. They've convinced you that being a good person means being accessible to their chaos at all times. But here's what they don't want you to understand. Your emotional energy is finite and precious. Every moment you spend managing their manufactured crises is a moment stolen from your own growth, your own relationships, your own peace. They're not asking you to care. They're asking you to sacrifice your well-being for their emotional regulation. The most insidious part of this dynamic is how it disguises itself as genuine need. They'll present their drama as urgent, as life-changing, as something only you can understand or fix. They'll make you feel special, chosen, uniquely qualified to help them through this crisis. But notice how these crises never actually resolve. Notice how your help never actually helps. Notice how the drama simply shapeshifts into new forms, always requiring more of your attention, more of your energy, more of your life. This is the difference between someone who occasionally needs support and someone who feeds on chaos. People who genuinely need help want to solve their problems. Drama addicts want to perpetuate them because the problems aren't the point. Your reaction to the problems is the point. When you start to recognize these patterns, you'll see them everywhere. The friend who only calls when they need something. The family member who creates a crisis every time you try to set boundaries. The colleague who turns every workplace interaction into a personal drama. The romantic partner who manufactures conflict whenever you seem too happy or too independent. These people have learned to weaponize your own values against you. They use your kindness as a leash, your empathy as a chain, your sense of responsibility as a prison. They've turned your strengths into their tools of control. But the moment you understand this game, you can stop playing it. You can stop being their emotional entertainment. You can stop being their crisis manager. You can stop being their unpaid therapist. You can reclaim your energy, your time, your peace. The power shift happens when you realize that their emotional emergencies are not your responsibility. Their inability to regulate their own emotions is not your problem to solve. Their drama is not your reality to inhabit. Their chaos is not your peace to sacrifice. This doesn't make you cold or uncaring. It makes you discerning. It makes you protective of your own well-being. It makes you someone who understands the difference between genuine need and emotional manipulation. When you stop feeding the drama, you'll discover something profound. Most of the chaos in your life wasn't actually yours to begin with. It was borrowed, inherited, or imposed by people who couldn't handle their own emotional reality. When you return their drama to them, when you refuse to carry their emotional baggage, you'll find that your life becomes remarkably peaceful. The people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries. They'll understand when you need space. They'll appreciate your energy instead of depleting it. They'll add to your peace instead of subtracting from it. Those who react with anger, guilt trips, or escalated drama when you set boundaries are revealing their true intentions. They're showing you that they valued your utility more than your well-being. They're proving that their connection to you was transactional, not genuine. Walking away from drama isn't about abandoning people in their time of need. It's about refusing to enable their addiction to chaos. It's about declining to participate in their emotional dysfunction. It's about choosing your own peace over their perpetual crisis. The most radical act of self-love you can commit is to become unavailable for other people's manufactured emergencies, to become unreachable for their emotional manipulation, to become unresponsive to their attempts to make their problems your problems. This is how you reclaim your life. This is how you protect your energy. This is how you create space for genuine relationships, real growth, and authentic peace. This is how you stop being a supporting character in everyone else's drama and start being the protagonist of your own story. You think you understand what walking away from drama really means, but let me tell you something that will shake you to your core. Most people who claim they've walked away from drama are still dancing to its tune, still reacting to its rhythm, still letting it control their every move. They've simply learned to react differently, but they're still reacting, still trapped in the same emotional prison they think they've escaped. The truth is, walking away from drama isn't about physical distance. It's not about blocking phone numbers or avoiding certain people. It's about achieving something far more profound, something that most people never even realize exists. It's about reaching a state of emotional sovereignty where drama doesn't just bounce off you, it doesn't even register as drama anymore. You see, drama feeds on your emotional investment. Every time you feel that familiar surge of anger, that need to defend yourself, that compulsion to set the record straight, you're feeding the beast. You're giving it exactly what it needs to survive and grow stronger. And the most insidious part? You think you're handling it well because you're not screaming, you're not throwing things, you're not causing a scene. But inside you're still burning, still consumed, still giving away your power piece by piece. Real detachment from drama begins when you understand that your peace is not negotiable. Not for family, not for friends, not for anyone. When you truly grasp this concept, something extraordinary happens. You stop trying to manage other people's emotions. You stop trying to control their reactions. You stop trying to make them understand your perspective. Because you realize that none of that has anything to do with you. The people who master this art, they possess something that others find deeply unsettling. They have what I call emotional immunity. They can walk into a room full of chaos and remain completely untouched. They can listen to criticism without their hearts racing. They can witness betrayal without their world crumbling. This isn't because they don't care, it's because they've learned to care about the right things. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Achieving this level of emotional immunity requires you to let go of something most people desperately cling to. The need to be right. The need to be understood. The need to be validated. These needs are the hooks that drama uses to reel you back in, time and time again. Think about the last time you got pulled into drama. I guarantee you, somewhere in that situation, one of these needs was triggered. Maybe someone misrepresented your words, and you felt compelled to correct them. Maybe someone questioned your motives, and you felt the need to defend your character. Maybe someone ignored your boundaries, and you felt obligated to make them understand why those boundaries exist. But what if I told you that all of these responses, no matter how justified they seem, are forms of emotional slavery? What if I told you that every time you feel compelled to respond, to defend, to explain, you're actually announcing to the world that your peace can be disturbed, your center can be shaken, your power can be stolen? The people who have truly walked away from drama have learned something that sounds almost impossible. They've learned to be misunderstood without suffering. They've learned to be criticized without defending. They've learned to be provoked without reacting. This isn't indifference, it's mastery. When you reach this level, something profound happens in your relationships. The people who are using drama to control you suddenly lose their power. The manipulators find themselves talking to a wall. The attention seekers discover that their tactics no longer work. And in that moment of powerlessness, they reveal their true nature. Some will respect your new boundaries and evolve their behavior. Others will escalate their tactics, becoming more dramatic, more manipulative, more desperate for a reaction. And a few will simply disappear from your life, unable to function in a relationship where they can't create chaos. This is the real test of walking away from drama. Can you maintain your peace when others are losing their minds? Can you stay centered when everyone around you is trying to pull you into their emotional tornado? Can you remain sovereign when others are desperately trying to make you a subject in their kingdom of chaos? The answer lies in understanding that drama is not about the events themselves. It's about the meaning you assign to those events. Two people can experience the exact same situation and have completely different responses. One person sees betrayal, where another sees freedom. One person sees abandonment, where another sees an opportunity for growth. One person sees attack, where another sees someone else's pain expressing itself. This shift in perspective is what separates those who are truly free from drama from those who are still enslaved by it. When you can look at a dramatic situation and see it for what it really is, a desperate attempt by someone to feel important, to feel heard, to feel powerful, you stop taking it personally, you stop making it about you. But this requires a level of emotional maturity that most people never develop. It requires you to see past the surface of someone's behavior to the wound underneath. It requires you to understand that hurt people, and that their attacks on you are really attacks on themselves, projected outward because they lack the courage to look inward. This doesn't mean you become a doormat or that you allow people to treat you poorly. It means you respond from a place of strength rather than weakness, from clarity rather than confusion, from love rather than fear. You set boundaries not out of anger, but out of self-respect. You walk away not out of hatred, but out of wisdom. The ultimate freedom from drama comes when you realize that you don't need to win every battle. You don't need to have the last word. You don't need to prove your point. You don't need to make them understand. You just need to protect your peace and honor your truth. This is the subtle art of walking away from drama. It's not about running from conflict. It's about refusing to participate in unnecessary chaos. It's not about avoiding difficult conversations. It's about choosing which battles are worth your energy. It's not about being weak. It's about being wise enough to know that some fights are unwinnable and some people are unreachable. When you master this art, you discover something beautiful. The energy you were spending on drama gets redirected toward creation, toward growth, toward building the life you actually want. The mental space that was occupied by other people's chaos becomes available for your own dreams and aspirations. The emotional bandwidth that was consumed by managing other people's feelings becomes available for managing your own life. This is why walking away from drama is not just about avoiding negativity. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about taking back control of your emotional state, your mental energy, and your life direction. It's about becoming the author of your own story instead of a character in someone else's drama. The people who have mastered this art understand that their peace is their power. They know that their calm is their strength. They recognize that their ability to remain centered in the midst of chaos is their greatest asset. And they protect these qualities fiercely because they understand that once you give away your peace, everything else becomes negotiable. This is the path of emotional sovereignty. This is the journey toward true freedom. And it begins the moment you decide that your peace is worth more than their approval, their understanding, or their participation in your life. Now, when you step away from drama, you enter a different kind of battlefield. This is where the work truly begins, because walking away is only the first step. The real challenge is what happens next, in the silence, in the space you've created for yourself. This is where most people fail, where they retreat back to the familiar chaos because they cannot handle what they discover in the quiet. Carl Jung understood this perfectly. He knew that when you remove external distractions, when you stop feeding the drama machine, you're left face to face with yourself. And that can be terrifying, because in that silence, all the things you've been avoiding, all the internal work you've been postponing, all the unresolved parts of yourself suddenly demand attention. This is why so many people who try to walk away from drama end up right back in it. They mistake the absence of external chaos for peace, but they haven't done the internal work necessary to maintain that peace. They haven't built the psychological infrastructure to sustain a drama-free life. The truth is, drama addiction is real. Your nervous system becomes accustomed to the constant stimulation, the emotional highs and lows, the adrenaline rush of conflict. When you remove that, your body and mind go into withdrawal. You feel restless, anxious, like something is missing. You might even create drama unconsciously just to feel normal again. But here's what Jung discovered through his own dark night of the soul. This discomfort, this restlessness, this confrontation with yourself is not something to be avoided. It's the doorway to genuine transformation. It's in this space of uncomfortable silence that you begin to differentiate between who you really are and who you've been conditioned to be. Most people live their entire lives as characters in other people's stories. They react to drama because they've never learned to author their own narrative. They engage in conflicts because they've never developed an internal compass strong enough to navigate without external validation. They feed chaos because they've never discovered the profound power that comes from inner stillness. When you truly walk away from drama, you're not just changing your behavior, you're changing your identity. You're moving from being a reactor to being a creator. You're shifting from being driven by external circumstances to being guided by internal wisdom. And this shift requires more than just saying no to toxic situations. It requires you to say yes to the difficult work of self-discovery. This is where the concept of shadow work becomes crucial. Jung taught us that we all have a shadow, those parts of ourselves we've rejected, denied, or hidden away. Often, the drama we attract externally is a reflection of the unresolved drama within us. The conflicts we find ourselves in mirror the internal conflicts we haven't addressed. When you walk away from external drama but haven't faced your internal shadow, you're only treating the symptoms, not the cause. You might avoid toxic people, but you'll still carry toxic patterns. You might remove yourself from chaotic situations, but you'll still have chaos in your mind. You might create physical boundaries, but you'll still lack emotional boundaries. The real work begins when you sit with your discomfort instead of medicating it with drama. When you feel the urge to check your phone, to engage in gossip, to create conflict just to feel something, and you resist. When you choose to stay present with whatever emotions arise, no matter how uncomfortable they are. This process is what Jung called individuation, the journey of becoming whole. It's not about becoming perfect or eliminating all conflict from your life. It's about becoming conscious of your patterns, your triggers, your unconscious motivations. It's about integrating all parts of yourself, including the parts you'd rather not acknowledge. People will test you during this process. They'll try to pull you back into old patterns. They'll escalate their behavior when you stop responding. They'll accuse you of changing, of being cold, of thinking you're better than them. And they're right. You are changing. You are becoming someone who values peace over chaos, consciousness over reactivity, authenticity over performance. But here's the paradox. As you become more grounded in yourself, as you develop genuine inner peace, you actually become more capable of handling conflict when it's necessary. You're no longer avoiding drama because you're afraid of it. You're choosing not to engage because you have something better to protect, something more valuable to preserve. This is when you develop what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold tension without immediately resolving it. You can sit with ambiguity, with uncertainty, with the discomfort of not knowing what comes next. You can be present with difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them. You can witness conflict without being consumed by it. Your nervous system begins to rewire itself. Instead of being constantly activated by external stimuli, you develop a natural state of calm alertness. You become like a mountain, unmoved by the storms that rage around you. This doesn't mean you become emotionless or disconnected. It means you become emotionally sovereign. The people who truly matter in your life will respect this transformation. They'll appreciate the peace you bring to relationships. They'll value your ability to listen without immediately offering solutions, to be present without trying to fix everything. They'll recognize that your refusal to engage in drama comes from strength, not weakness. But you'll also discover that some relationships were built entirely on shared drama. When you remove the chaos, there's nothing left. These relationships will naturally fade away. And while this might feel sad at first, you'll eventually recognize it as liberation. You're making space for connections based on genuine compatibility, shared values, and mutual respect. The most profound shift happens when you realize that you no longer need drama to feel alive. You discover that peace isn't boring, it's powerful. Silence isn't empty, it's full of possibility. Solitude isn't lonely, it's sacred. You find richness in simplicity, depth in stillness, strength in surrender. This is when walking away from drama becomes a way of life, not just a crisis management strategy. You naturally gravitate toward people and situations that nourish your soul. You instinctively avoid environments that drain your energy. You develop an internal radar that can detect manipulation, chaos, and toxicity from a mile away. You become someone who doesn't just avoid drama, but actively creates peace. Your presence becomes a sanctuary for others who are tired of the constant conflict. You become a beacon for those who are ready to do their own inner work. You model what it looks like to live from a place of centered strength rather than reactive weakness. The art of walking away from drama is ultimately the art of walking toward yourself. It's about choosing consciousness over unconsciousness, presence over distraction, authenticity over performance. It's about recognizing that the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. And that relationship requires the same boundaries, respect, and care that you would give to any other meaningful connection. This journey isn't easy, and it's never really finished. There will always be new levels of awareness to reach, new patterns to break, new aspects of yourself to integrate. But once you taste the freedom that comes from living drama-free, once you experience the profound peace that emerges from inner work, you'll never want to go back to the old way of being. You'll understand that walking away from drama isn't about avoiding life, it's about embracing it fully. It's about showing up as your most authentic self, even when that self is still a work in progress. It's about choosing love over fear, growth over stagnation, wisdom over reactivity. And in making these choices, you don't just change your own life, you change the lives of everyone around you. Looking at the patterns that create your most intense emotions, you've probably noticed something interesting. The moments that shake you the most aren't the big dramatic explosions. They're the quiet betrayals, the slow realizations, the gradual understanding that what you thought was solid ground was actually quicksand all along. This is where we reach the deepest layer of walking away from drama. Because there's a difference between avoiding surface-level conflicts and recognizing the subtle psychological warfare that happens in the shadows, the manipulation that never announces itself, the emotional exploitation that wears the mask of care. Most people think drama is loud. They think it's screaming matches and public scenes. But the most dangerous drama is silent. It's the person who never raises their voice, but somehow always gets their way. It's the relationship that feels heavy for reasons you can't quite articulate. It's the conversation that leaves you questioning your own memory. This is what Jung called the shadow of relationships, the dark underbelly of human connection where people don't attack directly, they erode. They don't confront, they undermine. They don't argue, they gaslight. Walking away from this level of drama requires a different kind of strength. It requires you to trust your instincts even when you can't prove what's happening. It requires you to value your peace over the need to be understood. It requires you to accept that some people will never admit what they're doing, so waiting for acknowledgement is a form of self-imprisonment. The most sophisticated manipulators know exactly how to trigger your psychology. They know which buttons to push to make you react. They know how to make you feel crazy for questioning them. They know how to position themselves as the victim while systematically dismantling your sense of reality. And here's what makes this so insidious. They often believe their own performance. They've convinced themselves that their manipulation is actually love, that their control is actually care, that their emotional terrorism is actually protection. You've probably encountered this. The person who says they're worried about you while systematically isolating you from others. The individual who claims to have your best interests at heart while consistently undermining your confidence. The relationship that feels like walking on eggshells disguised as deep connection. This is where the art of walking away becomes psychological surgery. You're not just removing yourself from obvious toxicity. You're extracting yourself from sophisticated psychological entanglement. You're choosing to trust your nervous system over someone else's narrative. Your body knows. Your intuition knows. That feeling in your stomach when certain people are around. That exhaustion after specific conversations. That sense of being drained without understanding why. This isn't weakness or oversensitivity. This is your internal warning system functioning exactly as it should. But here's what happens when you start honoring these internal signals. People get uncomfortable. The ones who benefit from your emotional availability start to panic. They escalate. They use guilt, shame, fear, obligation. They remind you of everything they've done for you. They question your mental state. They suggest you're being ungrateful, selfish, difficult. This is the test. This is where most people cave. Because the pressure to return to the familiar dysfunction feels overwhelming. The guilt of disappointing others feels unbearable. The fear of being alone feels paralyzing. But this is exactly where your power lies. in your ability to remain unmoved by emotional manipulation, in your capacity to choose your peace over someone else's comfort, in your willingness to be misunderstood rather than return to a situation that slowly kills your spirit. The truth is that some people are addicted to drama, and they need you to participate in their addiction. They need your reactions to feel alive. They need your emotional energy to feel powerful. They need your chaos to avoid looking at their own emptiness. When you refuse to participate, you're not just setting a boundary, you're revealing something they don't want to see. You're exposing the hollowness of their approach to relationships. You're showing them that genuine connection doesn't require psychological warfare. This is why your withdrawal feels like an attack to them. Because in choosing peace, you're implicitly rejecting their entire way of relating. You're saying that love doesn't have to hurt, that connection doesn't require sacrifice of self, that intimacy doesn't mean losing your identity. Most people have been conditioned to believe that intensity equals depth, that conflict equals passion, that drama equals care. But walking away from drama means recognizing that these equations are false, that the most profound connections happen in stillness, not storm. The people who truly belong in your life won't require you to abandon yourself to keep them. They won't demand that you shrink to make them comfortable. They won't punish you for having boundaries or gaslight you for trusting your instincts. Real love amplifies your peace, not your anxiety. Authentic connection makes you feel more like yourself, not less. Genuine intimacy creates space for both people to grow, not control mechanisms to keep each other small. This is what it means to have dramatic intelligence at the deepest level. It's not just about avoiding obvious conflicts. It's about recognizing the subtle ways people try to entangle you in their psychological dysfunction. It's about trusting your internal compass even when everyone around you is questioning its accuracy. Walking away from drama ultimately means walking toward yourself. It means choosing your own psychological freedom over the false comfort of familiar dysfunction. It means accepting that some people will never understand your choices, and that their understanding was never required for your liberation. The strongest people you know aren't the ones who never leave. They're the ones who have the courage to walk away from anything that asks them to betray their own soul. They're the ones who understand that sometimes love means letting go, even when letting go feels like dying. This is the final lesson of dramatic intelligence. Your peace is not negotiable. Your sanity is not up for discussion. Your right to exist without psychological warfare is not dependent on anyone else's approval. When you truly understand this, walking away stops being an act of rebellion and becomes an act of self-love. It stops being about them and becomes about you. It stops being dramatic and becomes the most natural thing in the world. Because at the end of the day, you're not walking away from drama. You're walking toward the life that's been waiting for you on the other side of your courage. The final frontier of walking away from drama isn't just about mastering the art of withdrawal. It's about the complete transformation of your internal landscape. When you reach this point, you're no longer someone who walks away from chaos because you have to, but because you've become someone who exists in a different reality altogether. Think about it this way. You've spent months, maybe years, learning to recognize manipulation, setting boundaries, refusing to engage with toxicity. You've practiced the discipline of silence, the power of emotional unavailability, the strength that comes from choosing yourself over the approval of others. But now something deeper has shifted. You've moved beyond reaction, beyond strategy, beyond even the need to consciously choose peace. You've become peace. This transformation happens gradually, then suddenly. One day you realize that the drama that used to consume your thoughts, the conflicts that used to steal your sleep, the toxic dynamics that used to drain your energy, they simply don't register anymore. Not because you're avoiding them, but because you've transcended the frequency on which they operate. When you reach this level of inner sovereignty, something remarkable happens. The world begins to respond to you differently. People sense that you're no longer available for the games they used to play with you. Your energy has become so refined, so centered, that chaos can't find a foothold in your presence. You don't need to announce your boundaries because they're written in your very essence. This is what true emotional mastery looks like. It's not the absence of feeling. It's the presence of such profound self-awareness that you can feel everything without being destabilized by anything. You can witness pain without drowning in it. You can observe manipulation without being pulled into it. You can see chaos without becoming it. The people who used to trigger you, who used to know exactly which buttons to push, find themselves disarmed. Your buttons have been disconnected, not because you've become cold or indifferent, but because you've integrated those wounded parts of yourself. You've done the shadow work. You've faced your demons, befriended your darkness, and emerged whole. This wholeness is your shield. When you're no longer at war with yourself, no external conflict can touch your core. When you've made peace with your own contradictions, other people's chaos can't fragment you. When you've learned to love even the parts of yourself you once rejected, nobody else's rejection can destroy you. But here's what nobody tells you about reaching this level of inner freedom. It's lonely. Not because you're isolated, but because you've outgrown the need for the kind of connections that most people settle for. You can no longer tolerate surface-level relationships. You can't pretend to be interested in gossip, drama, or the endless cycle of complaint and blame that occupies so much of human interaction. This loneliness isn't painful. It's sacred. It's the space where your authentic self finally gets to breathe. It's the silence where your soul can speak without competing with the noise of other people's unhealed wounds. It's the solitude where you discover that you were never actually alone. You were just surrounded by the wrong energy. In this space, you begin to attract a different kind of person. Not the energy vampires, not the drama creators, not the emotionally unavailable or the perpetually triggered. You begin to magnetize people who've done their own work, who've walked their own path through the fire and emerged transformed. These connections are rare, but they're real in a way that your previous relationships never were. The ultimate mastery isn't just walking away from drama. It's becoming so aligned with your true nature that drama can't exist in your presence. You become like water, flowing around obstacles without resistance, finding your way to where you belong without force or struggle. You become like space itself, vast enough to hold all experiences without being defined by any of them. This is the final teaching. Walking away from drama was never about them. It was always about you. It was about reclaiming your power, your peace, your right to exist without having to justify that existence to anyone. It was about remembering that you are not here to fix, save, or heal anyone else. You are here to be so fully yourself that your very presence gives others permission to do the same. When you embody this truth, when you live from this place of complete self-acceptance and inner authority, you become a force of nature. Not because you're trying to be powerful, but because you've stopped giving your power away. Not because you're trying to be impressive, but because you've stopped seeking anyone's impression of you. This is freedom. This is what lies on the other side of all the boundaries you've set, all the toxic relationships you've ended, all the drama you've refused to engage with. This is the life that's waiting for you when you finally, completely choose yourself. Not as an act of rebellion, but as an act of coming home to who you've always been beneath all the conditioning, all the wounds, all the ways you've betrayed yourself to keep others comfortable. The subtle art of walking away from drama is really the not-so-subtle art of walking toward yourself. And when you arrive there, when you're finally home in your own skin, in your own truth, in your own power, you realize that everything you went through was worth it. Every boundary you set, every person you disappointed, every moment of loneliness you endured, it was all preparing you for this moment when you finally understand that you are enough, exactly as you are, and you always have been.